We're live, Chairman.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Communities and Partnerships Committee, 2nd of July 2020. I would like to begin by welcoming those members of the public and press who are watching the live stream of this meeting via the Council's website. Members, you are by now aware of the need to keep your video camera switched on, please, for the duration of the meeting, and keep your microphone muted, except when I invite you to speak. Please click the raised hand function if you wish to ask a question or comment. There's always a risk that we should run into technical problems, and I would ask for your patience if we do. Should this occur, I will declare an adjournment while the fault is addressed and the public broadcast will be paused. If it is not possible to address the fault, the meeting may be abandoned until such times it can be reconvened. Can I remind members and officers that all virtual meetings will be recorded? Members, I will begin by calling the names of all members of the committee to establish your presence. Could you please confirm your presence when I called out your name? Councillor Ashwood.
Present.
Councillor Batchelor.
Present, Chairman.
Councillor Costello.
Present.
Councillor Every.
Present.
Councillor French.
Present.
Councillor Machini.
Present.
Councillor Nieto.
Present.
Councillor Smith. I think we're hoping Councillor Smith will join us shortly. I know she's having technical problems. Councillor Taylor. Amanda.
Present.
Thank you. And myself, Councillor Criswell. So we move to item 1 on the agenda, apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Just Councillor Smith, who's given apologies if she's unable to connect.
Okay, and she'll join us if she can. Thank you very much. Interest to declare, members. Do any members have any disclosable pecuniary interest or non-statutory disclosable interest to declare? Councillor Costello.
Yes, I need to declare an interest for item 8.
Thank you very much. And Councillor French.
Yeah, same. Agenda number 8 for the March 10 Rugby Club.
Okay, thank you. And I believe you'll abstain on those items when we get to them. Thank you very much, both. Thank you. In which case we move on to item 2, and that's minutes of the meeting held on the 18th of June. We're being asked to approve the minutes of the meeting as a correct record. Can I ask any member who does not agree with the proposals to raise their hand function now, or if they wish to make a comment to do so? Perhaps Councillor Costello and French could remove your hands from the previous item. Thank you. So do we have any comments on the minutes or dissent? If not, then I'll assume they're approved as a true record and sign them when I have an opportunity to do so. I see nobody indicating. Thank you very much. So we'll move on to the action log. And we have Adrian Chapman with us. Adrian, thank you very much. Would you like to go through the action log, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. There are no further changes to make at this point. The first 3 actions will, as we reported last time, be taken forward post the response phase of the pandemic. Action 268 and 275 have been completed, and we are providing a briefing note, preparing a briefing note for the action on the final page around the support for victims of hate crime, domestic abuse and sexual violence. That will be with members shortly. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Adrian. Any comments on the action log, members, or questions? Okay, thank you. Nobody indicating. So we'll move to item 3, petitions and public questions. We don't have any for this meeting. So I'll move on to item 4, which is Cambridgeshire County Council's response to COVID-19. Given the rapidly changing situation and the need to provide communities and public with the most up-to-date information possible, I have accepted this as a late report in order to allow it to contain the most up-to-date information possible and to enable the committee to be briefed on the current situation in relation to the Council's response to COVID-19 for those services for which this committee is responsible. Over to you, Adrian, please. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chairman. Hi, members. Really good to see everyone. It is only a couple of weeks since our last committee meeting, so this is a slightly lighter touch report this time because a lot of the numbers and performance information hasn't changed, but I will just go through as normal and pick out some key points if I may. And just to line up really a later report on this agenda, at 2.2, our library service is really well on track with a phased, planned and controlled reopening from this weekend. I think, I don't want to build them up too much, but I think I've been really impressed with the way that the Assistant Director and the Head of Service have handled the safe reopening of our library service. It is a particular jewel in our crown, and I think they've done us proud. So no pressure, guys, but you know, we're hoping for big things, and you'll hear more of that shortly. At 2.4, I just want to point out the really great news that we've received across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, 288,000 of additional funding. We mentioned this in our previous two reports, but the funding's now been confirmed via the Police and Crime Commissioner to support victims of domestic abuse and sexual violence during the pandemic and after the pandemic as lockdown starts to ease. So some really great news there for the county, and our services I think have stood up really well, but this just enables further support and resilience at a time when you know, the situation for a lot of people is so difficult. So I'm really thrilled to be able to confirm that position. At 2.5, again, just picking out some of the headlines here, you recall that we have a backlog of 1,600 births to register prior to the lockdown beginning, and arrangements being changed that prevented birth registrations from happening. Pleased to say that we've already eaten into that backlog to the tune of 730 births, which is, I think, good progress, and the team will continue. But I think the much better news is the announcement 3 days ago that wedding and civil partnership ceremonies can begin again, which is just brilliant news for people whose plans, probably in the making of 2 or 3 years, were completely turned upside down. So some great news. I've included in the report at 2.5.3 the restrictions that still apply, and so it won't be perhaps quite as normally perceived for a wedding or civil partnership ceremony for many people, but nevertheless people can still start to plan. Our priority is to ensure that those people that had a wedding or civil partnership ceremony cancelled as a result of the pandemic are prioritised for the earliest bookings possible during the rest of this year and into 2021. And then when we've dealt with all of those people and have managed to slot them in as best we can to suit their needs, we'll open up to wider bookings in 2021 as well. From today onwards, people can book for 2022 onwards if they haven't previously booked. But if people want a wedding in 2021 and that they haven't been part of that cancelled group, they'll just need to wait a few more days whilst we sort out and address the priority group that I've described. But really good news, I think, and a positive story for people that want to have a ceremony. Similarly, we, as you know, have been dealing with a backlog in the coronial service. So jury inquests were stopped at the point that lockdown began. We have, though, been able to carry out a number of inquests using Skype for those inquests, that less complex inquests that don't require a jury, and been able to hold 103 of those, which has really helped to alleviate a potential backlog. There are still 65 cases that do require a jury to be heard now, and as of yesterday, in fact, we opened up provision in both Peterborough and additional provision in Huntingdon to hold jury inquests, which will help us eat through that backlog very quickly. I think, as you know, it's a particularly important area of our business because an inquest for so many families prevents closure and for those families to be able to move on. So we're really quite determined to get through that backlog as swiftly as we can. Those 65 deaths, incidentally, across all reasons for death, they're not necessarily COVID-related deaths, it's just the backlog of cases that have come about. So that's the service update. If I move into the response hub update at 2.7, The biggest news there really is the announcement again a few days ago that the shielding programme, which is the programme that the county-wide hub has been supporting, is being paused from the 1st of August. This is happening in 2 stages. So from the 6th of July, there'll be some lifting of the very strict and stringent social distancing and isolation measures that shielding dictates, that allows people who have shielded for many, many weeks now to form their own support bubble, to get out and about and meet others in a safe and controlled way. And then from the 1st of August, anybody that's shielding is advised that they no longer need to, at least for the time being. So the government have used the term paused, because it may be the case that we do need to initiate a shielding programme again, especially if there is a local outbreak of the kind that we've seen in Leicester. I should stress at this point, there is no indication at all that will happen in Cambridgeshire, but one never knows. And so the programme is paused. We'll remain ready as a county-wide hub to stand up our arrangements once again. And over the next 4 weeks, we'll be making contact with everybody that we've supported through the hub with food and medicines and befriending and social support, domestic chores and so on, to make sure that they safely transition into their own support arrangements from the 1st of August. And if they can't, we'll continue to provide support for them until they can. What we don't want to do is 2 things. One, create a cliff edge for people who have relied on support for weeks and for that support to suddenly disappear. And secondly, for demand to be passed through to our district and city council colleagues, where they're already very busy and dealing with their own vulnerable residents. So we'll continue to provide that support for as long as is necessary. 2.7.4, having said the programme is paused or will be paused from the 1st of August, the numbers of shielded people remains high. So 32,500 people who should be shielding today, just over 19,000 of whom are registered. Interestingly, the government will continue to keep the shielded list updated even after the 1st of August. And that's just in case, again, we have to stand up arrangements for people to shield. It will allow us to reach out to those people very quickly, rather than having to update the list from scratch. Just 2 further areas to pick out really in the report at 2.8 and 2.9. So if I can refer you to 2.8 first of all, we mentioned in the June committee meeting some work that the chairman had asked us to focus on following the information that had been published by Public Health England relating to the adverse impacts that COVID has had on Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities. And we, as a council, as you will all know, have a very strong track record of working in this field and supporting both communities and our own employees. But we feel that, and the chairman very much agrees, that this is an opportunity to take stock, use the information and evidence that's been published by Public Health England and test that evidence against our own communities and across our services to make sure that our Black, Asian and minority ethnic residents, as well as all others who are perhaps disadvantaged for other reasons, are not adversely impacted through means and measures that we might have some control over and can therefore improve. So the lens through which we'll take this work forward is our Tackling Poverty and Multiple Deprivation Working Group, which is a cross-party working group of this committee, which meets next on the 20th of July. And officers are busy compiling information about the position currently in terms of our response to services to BAME residents and communities, but also looking at the national reports that have been published, both in response to COVID so far, but also reports over the last few years that have presented recommendations to ensure that we've got a clear view about what we might do differently if we find that the BAME residents in Cambridgeshire are adversely affected as a result of their background or race. So that's a really important piece of work. We want to build on our existing work already. We want to review all of our services through the lens of BAME residents and understand the evidence and data that has been published to date. Our intention is to bring an interim report to you at the August committee and a fuller report in September. Such is the significance, I think, and importance of this work. I thank you in advance, those of you that are on the working group, for agreeing to meet on the 20th of July. I think we'll ramp up the work from then onwards. And then finally, just to draw your attention to section 2.9, again in the June committee meeting, we promised to set out in more detail local outbreak control arrangements. And I'm really pleased to point you to Appendix 1, which is our still hot off the press, really, local outbreak control plan. The requirement was to submit that plan to government by the 30th of June. Ours was submitted on time. What sits behind it is a very technical document, and Appendix 1, I hope you'll agree, it is a very public-facing document. It's, I think, as plain English as something that's very complex can be at this stage. I'd also just remind everyone that it's very iterative, and the way it's written today is based on what we know today, but will undoubtedly change, especially some of the operating structures. But the plan sets out in some detail how we will find out information about the local outbreak scenarios, how we'll build intelligence around trends, how we work together as a system to carry out preventative work or response work in the event of a local outbreak, how we'll respond in different settings, so if there's an outbreak in a school or a care home or amongst vulnerable groups, and then how our approach is governed and managed to make sure that we are ahead of the curve on this and using the intelligence that we receive to make sure that if there is a suggestion of an outbreak, we're in there very, very quickly before an outbreak can take hold. So really important role for this committee, as I mentioned last time, in terms of constantly reminding our population to adhere to the rules that are out there, to socially distance, and then if there is an outbreak or if they are contacted by the test and trace service, for residents to follow the rules to socially isolate for the period suggested by the test and trace service. And we're currently working on an operating procedure to ensure that the myriad sets of data that we receive on a daily basis are analysed in real time. So we receive data from a wide range of areas, health data, data from the police about traffic use, schools data, testing data. There's about 30 or 40 different sets of information that come into the organisation. That data is then analysed, and it's designed to allow us to see ahead of time what the trends are. So if we start to see an upturn in positive test results or increased traffic use in one part of our county, we can switch our attention to those communities to remind them of the need to observe social distancing and to follow the government guidance in order to prevent an escalation of an outbreak. So that work is happening as we speak, and I have every confidence that we'll have a really solid response in place that's system-wide. Just to finish, the financial implications section hasn't changed since last month, so we've not included any numbers. But again, hot off the press, even hotter off the press than the local outbreak control plan, is a press release from government this morning announcing further funding for local government, local councils in England, an additional £500 million being made available, and a second amount of funding to support a lost income. We don't have the detail yet. There is a briefing this afternoon where we'll no doubt learn more, but I thought to point that out to you as it's come in this morning, literally just before the meeting today, which is great news given the financial pressure that I know you're all aware of. So thank you, Chairman. That's my briefing for today.
Thank you, Adrian. Very comprehensive report as usual. Yes, that financial news was news to me, so that's very good. And I'd just like to add my thanks to officers, particularly the library and skills service, because of the offer that they've been putting online over the last 13, 14 weeks. And long may that continue. And of course, thanks to all our officers across all their services who are now planning how we get back to delivering services in a more front-facing way. So, right, questions and comments, members. Councillor French.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Adrian, I did ask you, I can't remember if it was last meeting or the meeting before, with regard to the people who had already paid for their, I'm going to say bans, it's probably old, that obviously weren't able to have their marriages or their civil. Are they going to have to pay again?
Thank you, Councillor French. This is very much an issue that we're dealing with this very week. We need to carry out some appropriate due diligence and build a business case. But my aspiration is to be as supportive as possible to couples who have been affected by circumstances that weren't in their control. Nationally, there is no guidance, and the General Register Office, who govern registration services, have very much said this is a matter of local discretion. And so we have been in discussion with the chairman and are minded to present a case that does waive fees, but that is yet to be confirmed. But that's very much the spirit of our thinking. And a number of other councils have already done this, and I think we should follow suit. So
Okay.
that's where we are today. Hopefully we'll be able to announce something very soon.
Thanks for that.
Thanks, Jan. Councillor Nieto, Lena.
Thank you, Chair. Adrian, I just wanted to congratulate you and the officers for that document, for the Appendix 1. I think it looks great. And I'm just hoping, and I assume that will be shared with all our, parish councils, all of our stakeholders across the county, because, yeah, I think it's very clear and is very, friendly user. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nieto. That's really helpful feedback. You can imagine the blood, sweat and tears. You can probably see them still on the document that went into it. It's a very difficult subject to try and turn into something that's accessible. So I'll take that back to the team. And yes, it has been shared widely and will continue to be shared widely. And every time there's an update, we'll do the same, make sure everybody's got the latest version. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adrian. And I know you had a major input into that outbreak plan. So yeah, thank you very much indeed. Any other questions or points, members? Okay, I see no other raised hands. So if we could turn to the recommendations, please. And we have 3 recommendations. To note progress to date in responding to the impact of the coronavirus, note the approach being taken to local outbreak management and control, including the NHS Test and Trace programme, and note and endorse the approach being taken to ensure that outcomes for Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities are not impacted by their race or background. So if you're all happy to take those 3 en bloc, please indicate if otherwise, or indicate if you are not in agreement with those recommendations. And if there's no indications, which there aren't, then I'll assume everyone's happy with those recommendations. So they're passed. Thank you very much indeed, everybody.
Thank you, members.
Thank you. So we'll now move on to item 5, members, which is Voluntary and Community Sector Infrastructure Support Agreement. And we have Elaine Matthews with us, I believe, to present.
Yes. Hi.
Welcome, Elaine.
Thank you, Chair, and hello, everybody. Nice to see you all. So you hopefully have the paperwork there before you. Just to give you a brief bit of background, Cambridgeshire County Council currently provides support for frontline voluntary and community groups through a grant agreement arrangement, which is met by Support Cambridgeshire, which is the name of the organisation that actually pulls in 3 groups, which is Hunts Forum, Cambridge CVS and Cambridgeshire Acre. Together they form Support Cambridgeshire. They provide training, information, advice, support on funding, how to access that, and generally work very, very closely with voluntary and community groups in our area who want that level of support. That's called Voluntary and Community Sector Infrastructure Support. Previously, in October 2019, this committee approved a future approach to tender for voluntary and community sector infrastructure support jointly with Peterborough City Council. And then on the 24th of November, this committee also endorsed an extension to the current grant agreement with Support Cambridgeshire, which would allow us to fulfil the very detailed procurement and necessary regulations that we have to follow. That extension in November was agreed up to the 31st of March 2021. Pre-COVID time, there was a great deal of work that's been done by officers, but also with our partners, with stakeholders and other potential contributors to think about the specification for that future agreement. We did surveys and worked with voluntary and community sector to find out what support they wanted from our infrastructure support contract. Of course, the pandemic has then come into force. Our officers have been redeployed and have quite rightly fully focused on supporting communities and our residents to make their way through the pandemic. But also it's really helped us rethink the way that we might provide future support for voluntary and community sector. The voluntary and community sector themselves are also very keen to rethink their previous thoughts on what sort of support they might need. So looking at 2.1 of the paper there, committee previously approved a joint commission which would allow funding from the council, from Peterborough City Council and also from the clinical commissioning group. Those parties are still interested in joining with us to have a joint commission. And it's also possible there might be other partners that might also be interested now in joining us. That's something we wish to explore. The intention in November was to have 3 contracts or lots which share a common specification, but also allow us to focus on geographical areas for delivery, very much in tune with the Think Communities way of thinking. As a result of the pandemic, we've obviously seen an unprecedented response from our residents who want to volunteer their support and increased engagement with the voluntary and community sector. That passion, that enthusiasm is something we want to capture and help and encourage and just make it easy for people to continue to be seen as very active in their communities. The paper today is to ask this committee to endorse a further extension to the current contract. The pandemic has meant that our officers have been fully focused on that, but we also want to just take stock of what the voluntary and community sector are asking of us now. So I would ask this committee to endorse a further 6-month extension to the current contract. That would mean that the new contract will actually start on the 1st of October 2021. The total value of the exemption waiver, which includes the previous exemption agreed in November by this committee, would come to 136,560 and would be a total of 13 months extension to the original agreement. That's it, really. So if anybody has any questions or if I can clarify anything, please do let me know.
Thank you very much, Elaine. So basically that's a pro rata extension of the funding that we've been giving previously, which is, yes, that's very clear. Thank you very much. And yes, I'd just like to add my thanks to all the volunteers out there that have really got engaged with the help needed for the COVID-19 epidemic. Elaine, as you've said, it's been great to see across the whole of the county, all the community spirit that's risen up and all the volunteers that have helped. I know feedback from those that have received help have said how great they felt the community spirit was and how pleased they would be to see some sort of support continue locally. And of course, as you said, all the volunteers have said how passionate they are and they would actually like to continue supporting the community. So yes, anything we can do to continue that would be really, really great. And of course, this arrangement is our interface with the voluntary sector bodies that can help make that happen. So thank you, Elaine. Any comments, members? Any questions at all? Fairly straightforward paper, very well explained by Elaine. So
thank you.
New hands are up.
Liz, yes, sorry, Liz, I'm with you.
wore the blue hat. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much, Elaine. Nice to see you again. So, for the report, I just want to focus for a moment specifically on Support Cambridgeshire, and obviously I understand, and I will be supporting this extension. I just wanted to get reassurance that during this time, because I haven't actually seen that in East Cambs, because I think one of the issues I'd had was that there wasn't much engagement between Support Cambridgeshire and councillors, and I haven't sort of seen that increase, whereas all our councillors are heavily involved in COVID. But I want just reassurance that they are involved in a different way. I'm not quite sure how they are, because obviously the emphasis was on training and engagement, but how that has been working, and that secondly, while we are rethinking that they're going to be heavily engaged in our post-COVID working parties that are in all our councils, and all our parishes have now set up post-COVID working parties and so on. So that engagement during this period of an extension, I think is going to be incredibly important, because it is an expensive contract, and just want to make sure that from our perspective, from council's perspective, that we are getting value for money on that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I completely understand that, Liz. I will say for Support Cambridgeshire, we've been really pleased with the way that they did respond to support needed across the whole county. So the current value of the contract is, I think, off memory, around about 165,000 for the whole county. And some districts choose to also have their own local arrangements with other groups, or sometimes with some of the groups confirmed. So we're really mindful of the need for Support Cambridgeshire Group to work with other organisations that are very active and very well known and very trusted in their local communities as well, so that they're complementing the support that's being given. But certainly looking online at Support Cambridgeshire, they were very quick to develop and publish support for those new emerging volunteer groups who were perhaps less well established than some of the ones that we've previously been working with, and giving them really good advice on things like the things that were cropping up in those early days, which was things like, if I support somebody with shopping, how do I manage the money aspect? So they were very good and quick to respond to that. They were also really good at looking at where there were some very well established and respected community groups, and how they could be seen as the exemplar, and perhaps, you know, to point volunteers towards well-established groups who have got all the correct processes in place and understand safeguarding issues, etc. So we were pleased with their focus at that. I know that part of the Support Cambridgeshire contract is for them to provide voice and representation at strategic groups, and I know that has happened certainly at the groups that Adrian's been chairing and at a higher level, so they've been very visible through those strategic groups. But you're quite right that for this extended period, we're really keen to revisit our original agreement with them and have a look at actually what's relevant now. What are we expecting them to give us during this extended period, and what might that look like? So certainly conversations, should this committee agree to endorse the extension, those sort of conversations will be happening very quickly.
Thank you. That's fine. Thank you, Elaine.
Thank you, Elaine. Councillor Batchelor. Henry.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thanks to Elaine for the report. And I too will be endorsing the recommendation. I just had a quick question about the finances in paragraph 2.4. I'm assuming that the cost there, the 136,500, will be charged, is what the county council have to pay. I was just wondering, Elaine, which pot that came out of, or where exactly these funds are coming from?
That's part of my core budget. Would I say my? That's part of the core budget for that I manage already. So that's already that's the annual amount that we have already. That's core budget. Sorry, I worded that really badly, but it's core budget. It's the same amount.
Okay, understood. Thanks.
Sorry.
Thanks, Elaine. Yes, it's in your budget line, isn't it? In the business plan. So yeah, that's fine. Any other questions, members, or comments? I see no hands raised, so in that case we'll move to the recommendation. So the committee is asked to note the requirement for and endorse an extension to the current grant agreement with Support Cambridgeshire to allow for adherence to procurement regulations as described in section 2.3 and 2.4 of the report. Please indicate, members, if you're not happy with those recommendations. Otherwise, I'll take them as approved. Nobody indicating. So that recommendation's approved then. Thank you very much, Elaine.
Thank you.
Okay, members. So we move on to item 6, which is reopening library and archive services. And I think we have Pat Carrington with us.
Thank you, Chair.
Welcome, Pat. Thank you.
Thank you. Quite a lot of exciting things been happening in the library service over the past 14 weeks. And I'd like to give you an overview of the paper, but then I'm going to pass on to Gary, the head of service, who is going to take you through some of the detail, particularly around the work the teams have been doing and the plans for opening up. And thank you, Adrian, for your kind words. But I think it's down to Gary and the team that's really been working hard to ensure that libraries are at the forefront of the recovery plan as soon as they're able to open, which is next week, which is great. So the report itself that we're presenting to committee actually covers, firstly, the work that the library have undertaken during lockdown. And I think that's been a really important role that the team have played in supporting the well-being during the past 14 weeks that we've had during the lockdown period. And the support they've given is not just to those that have had access to technology and the internet, but also they've been creative in the ways in which they've been able to support local people that are digitally excluded. And that's been a great achievement. Alongside of the work that they've done independently, they've also formed new partnerships and worked on joint initiatives, which has supported local people during this difficult time. So Gary's going to give you some examples of those very shortly. And as well as sort of keeping the day job going and maintaining that level of support for local people, alongside of that, they've been planning literally from the start of closure on how they're going to reopen and do that in a safe way. And so again, libraries and archive teams have both been working really hard on those plans, and Gary will take you through those shortly and be able to answer any questions regarding the opening of that starts next week. Alongside of that, there's still other developments that have been going on in the library service. And one of the areas that we've been working on is the relocation of the staff that are based at the Roger Ashcombe Centre. And what we wanted to make sure as part of that relocation is that what we did really aligned to the new library vision, which this committee agreed to at a prior meeting. And it was very much about saying, let's not just replicate what's already there, but let's take a step back and look at what's required in order to build on the new agenda, which has been partly already achieved through the work that they've been doing during the pandemic. So let's build on that and look at how we can develop it further. And so Gary, myself and the management team did a review of the functions at the Roger Ashcombe Centre. And what became very apparent was a replace or relocate and replicate actually wouldn't necessarily fully align to the new agenda and the think communities. And what we needed to do was really look at a multi-site location. And what that's resulted in is us looking at a site for a distribution centre, which could serve the county, that would be placed as well with the new site opening at Alconbury Weald in the future, and would be in a location that where possible would reduce the emphasis to sit in traffic jams and spend too much time on the road. And so at CNI committee on the 23rd of June, they approved the purchase of a new building at the Lakes Business Park at St Ives, and that we're recommending becomes a distribution centre for the library. But the other 50% of the staff we're going to place in library buildings, or we propose to place in library buildings across the county, so that they form part of that support network and infrastructure that's front facing with our customers, so that we can really get to the heart of those communities. In addition to doing that work, we've also been working with a joint team looking at how we can really take our services even closer to the heart of the community in the Think Communities agenda. And that's about us putting forward a business case to purchase a bus which will take those services into local communities. And the idea behind that is it removes the barriers that prevents people accessing the services that we have on offer as a local authority. And so that project aim is about reducing isolation, improving access to those basic and enhanced services, and also increasing access to skills and employment. And that's going to be absolutely vital as part of the post-COVID recovery plan. You know, we really need to look as part of that recovery is how we're going to assist those people that are in rural localities in terms of retraining and reskilling to access the work of the future if they've been made unemployed as no fault of their own. And so that's another exciting project. It's in its infancy, but that's one that we can really drive the Think Communities agenda forward with in terms of bringing a variety of services and partnerships together to support people in rural localities. And then the final part of the paper is an update on those capital projects. So you can see there's a table in the paper that gives you an update on that, and those are the projects that are relevant to the services. So I'm very aware there's a lot of information in the paper, but what I want to do is pass across to Gary to really give you some of those more local details in terms of opening libraries and what the service has achieved.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you very much. And good morning, everybody.
Welcome, Gary.
Hi. So, yeah, so what I'm going to do is say a little bit about what we've been doing during the lockdown and then move on to our reopening offer, which commences on Monday. So, so the point I always make is that whilst libraries have been closed, the buildings have been closed since the 23rd of March. The library service has been open. So we diverted resources to digital. And as a result, digital has received a level of visibility and customer uptake that we could never have achieved, I think, through a promotional campaign. So e-issues tripled to more than 40,000 a month. Our digital lending apps saw more than 2,000 new unique users. And there were large increases in the use of our social media channels. So for instance, our first author story time reached more than 3,500 people, phenomenal. So our digital offer really comprises for both resources and experiences. So by resources, I mean the e-lending resources, books, magazines, comics, newspapers, our e-audio, our specialist resources such as Ancestry, which is the leading family history resource, which is available for the first time from home. Special deal we did with Ancestry, normally only available in a library. And we anticipated this demand by putting an additional £20,000 of resources into E. And also, along with other services, we got an additional 1K from DCMS because there were similar increases in E uptake across the country, which is great. But I think where there's been real innovation is around what I call E experiences. So things like author chats on social media, story times done online for children, and the whole Library Presents cultural program, which I'll mention in a second. So I really feel that the service has responded with agility and creativity in rapidly responding to lockdown by doing things which enrich people's lives, which is obviously the core in the DNA of the library service, enriching people's lives. And we've been able to translate that into the digital space. And I think that's really exemplified by the Library Presents team. They had to cancel their entire program of events in libraries, but they rose to the challenge by being the first and for a long period, the only NPO in the country to work with artists to develop a program online. So far, there have been 33 elements of content that have appeared as arts events online, and that's generated nearly 6,000 engagements. So phenomenal achievement, and I'm incredibly proud of the team. As I said, I think working with others is really in the DNA of the library service. And so we've worked in partnership with Cambridgeshire Skills and Civic on a new website called Open New Doors, which provides a variety of activities, experiences and learning opportunities for shielded people. And again, something that people were very focused, and from the idea to getting the thing up and running, I think was a matter of a couple of weeks, which is amazing. But we do obviously recognise that not everyone is online. And so at the earliest opportunity in May, we partially reinstated the Libraries at Home service, delivering books and spoken word materials to the doorsteps of people who are self-isolating due to age or health conditions. And that made a huge difference to the quality of people, vulnerable people in our community, and some really powerful comments and testimony from customers, which I received, which was very, very moving. Actually, it really brings it home to you what difference our service makes. So that's a bit of a flavour of what we've been up to in terms of the library service during the lockdown period. I want to really move now to our plans for reopening. So I'm obviously delighted to be able to say that in line with the government's own timetable, libraries are in phase 3 of the government's timetable. It is possible to offer some form of opening from next week. And in devising our reopening, we've been guided by the toolkit guidelines produced by government, DCMS, and Libraries Connected, which is the organisation which represents heads of service. And there's also been input into that toolkit from the Health and Safety Executive and Public Health England. So everything that we've put in place is compliant with the requirements of those organisations to provide a safe a library which is safe for customers and safe for staff. But of course, that means that the offer that we're putting forward is very, very different to what we would be offering in normal times. I mean, I think in normal times, the great strength of the library service is a place where all the community can share and convene. And of course, with COVID, the very last thing you want to encourage is sharing and convening. So the model is very, very different. Essentially, customers will be able to do two things. They'll be able to borrow books and they'll be able to use our IT. So just to look at each of those in turn. So the book borrowing, we've devised a brand new service which we call Select and Collect. And this allows the customer, either online or over the phone, to tell us what type of books they like. Our staff will then select the books for them. They'll notify the customer, who can then visit the library to collect, because under this model, we're not allowing open browsing of the library. The customers can, of course, return books, and in line with health requirements, that stock has to be quarantined for 72 hours before becoming available again. PC booking is the other aspect of our offer, and we recognise that the digital exclusion issue is a huge issue for many people, and that for those people, we're often the only place they can get online. So for this reason, we're offering access to PCs on a booking basis. To ensure distancing, we've had to reduce the number of machines available, and to promote access, we're offering 45-minute appointments. But again, a self-serve basis, so we're not offering staff assistance as we would in normal times. So in headline terms, that is the offer. We're going to introduce this in two phases initially. So phase 1, which commences on Monday, we'll be opening Cambridge Central, Ely, Huntingdon, March, St Ives, St Neots, Wisbech, Bar Hill and Camborne. And then in phase 2, we'll be opening the rest of the network, which we are scheduled to do from the week beginning 3rd of August. So opening hours are different. So because of the model, so Cambridge Central will be offering 4 opening sessions a week, 10 till 2, including a Saturday. And for other phase 1 libraries, 3 sessions a week, 10 till 2, including Saturday. And then when we move to the August libraries, there'll be 2 a week, 10 till 2. And we've gone for 10 till 2 because we just want a simple offer that can be simply communicated to the public, so they don't have to worry about different times. It's 10 till 2. And Saturday obviously is important because many people will be back in work and it might be the only time that they can use the library. So that is our interim offer that covers July and August, and we're going to monitor carefully how things work, and we'll be prepared to make changes in the light of experience. I mean, my priority next week is to visit all 9 libraries that are opening to see for myself how my model is working, to see whether the ship starts taking on water, hopefully not, and see staff, support staff, see customers. And as I say, we'll have a review at the end of the week to see how it's gone, and we'll be prepared to make changes. I should also say that archive staff are running a similar service. So obviously the volume of customers is much less there. They've been guided in their reopening plans by their own professional bodies, and they will be offering an appointment basis for customers. But it's a very, very, very good and well thought through offer. So as a bit of a whistle-stop tour there of what we've been doing during the lockdown and our plans, but very happy to take any questions on that at this point.
Thank you, Gary. Lots going on, so thank you very much again to you and your team. So members, questions for Gary or Pat. First, we've got Councillor Ashwood. Barbara.
Thank you, Chair. My comments relate to recommendation C, the central stock unit. For the benefit of those who don't know, I worked in libraries for over 49 years, mostly for Cambridge. And for the last 12 years, 2000 to 2012, I was senior librarian on the adult stock and promotion team based at the Roger Ascham site. I know some of the working practices have changed since then, but I do have a pretty good idea of what goes on there and just how vital that is to things. The move to the Lakes site, I do not understand. A lot of the staff who will need to make that move are people who don't drive and chose to work at Roger Ascham because it had good public transport links, which it still enables them to get out and about around the county if they need to, but means travelling to and from work is easy. The Lake site, there is no direct public transport. Buses do stop in Fenstanton or St Ives Park and Ride, but you're looking at over 2 miles to get there and back. I've been doing a bit of digging. The site apparently has no facilities. We would have possibly problems with staff doing single working there. They have both internal and external partners who regularly use the Roger Ascham site, but would now have to travel out to near Fenstanton. But I've had comments from staff. This has been going on since the autumn of 2018. They've been living with it for nearly 2 years. I went through that. I know exactly how they feel. Comments include lack of transparency and consultation, no input or engagement with the people concerned, inability to access the committee papers, no opportunity to raise questions, no consultation with staff on the needs. The stock unit serves Cambridge Central and the Cambridge City and South Cambs Mobile Library Service. They process all the new stock for Cambridge Central, so it gets down their shelf ready. There is currently a backlog of about 10,000 items at suppliers, which will all need to come out, and a lot of it will be going through the stock unit and will need moving on. The mobile library service, if that has to be based there, the comment is mobile routes and stopping locations would be affected, resulting in a reduction to the numbers of communities visited, which means we're actually reducing service. Increased emissions and fuel costs are in direct contravention with the CCC Green agenda. The total lack of involvement of the staff is what appalls me most. I really thought we had got past that stage. And it's interesting to see the final sentence in the recommendation is formally consult library staff accordingly. I cannot support this proposal. I would like to see it referred back. They've looked at various other options, all of which have been withdrawn, but never with any explanation to the staff involved as to why. And this is a dedicated team of people. They work hard. They offer support to Cambridge and some of the city libraries. They're not going to be able to do that if they get short of staff, say in Cambridge Central, and they're staff out at Fenstanton. I'm appalled, frankly. I approve everything else on there, but this one bit, no, I can't sanction it. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara.
Would you like me to respond to that? Some of those
yes,
points?
of course, Pat. I was just going to say some of the comments you've made, Barbara, are based on some assumptions, and of course, it's up to the operation of the service to deal with some of those issues. So, and as I understand it, Pat, the statutory staff consultation can't happen until we've identified the new site. So I think that there's an element of we need to get to a certain point first. But yes, please answer those points, Pat, if you can. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. I may miss some because there was a lot of points in there, but I'll pick up the ones that I've got a response to that I can share with you, and any others, please let me know if I've missed them. In terms of the staff being involved in this, actually done a lot of digging. Some of these points were raised very early on when I came into the library service. And I've worked with property, with the current management team, and also CAMS 2020. And from the information that I have, the actual conversations with the service commenced back in June 2019. There was an initial set of proposals on different locations, and in July 2019, feedback was sought from the then assistant director, who consulted with the team on that first suggested site for relocation, which I believe was the Cottenham store. The site then proved to be unviable because at that point the lease on that property was about to expire and the landlord chose to redevelop the site. So following that, there was further market reviews undertaken, and during this time the service and team were constantly involved in the discussions and the process. And I've got from the CAMS 2020 team 10 meetings and discussions recorded formally, and then I believe there were informal ones as well. During the period of time, over 20 possible locations were reviewed by property, of which 11 were in Cambridge itself. During that time, however, they were discounted for a variety of reasons, which included high costs, either being too large or lacking access for the mobiles. No suitable sites had been identified, and so the service director then expanded the search criteria, which included 3 sites, potential sites being identified. And those included Bar Hill, a Park and Ride site, and the St Ives site. The Park and Ride site required planning permission, and following advice, that couldn't have been secured. The Bar Hill site was a lease option, which wouldn't give a return on investment made into that building. And the St Ives building actually met the criteria that was put forward by the service, which the service were included in pulling together. And the location met that criteria, but also gave easy road access to all the libraries across the county. And the site actually met the size that the service required. The property was also available to purchase, so it would give the council an asset that could be realised at some point in the future. Looking at the services and what is offered, I believe one of the areas that was raised for discussion was the support that we give public health. Now, it's only actually the physical resources and 1 member of staff that will be based there, as it is a distribution centre, and the other staff members will be based in libraries and will still be available to go out and give those support services that were available. So from my point of view, and having discussed this with the directorate, then we do feel that there was a robust review of sites undertaken, and the service was consulted throughout the process. And that's backed up by the information that I've had shared from both property, CAMS 2020, and the notes that have been recorded from those meetings. In terms of public transport, there isn't easy accessible public transport to that site, but as the chair has said, we can't formally consult with the service until an agreement has been made. And as with all CAMS 2020 and all relocations, that would form part of the county council policy, and HR would work with individuals on their circumstances to review what their options are moving forward. So that is part of the process, because we are very aware that members would want to ensure that we're able to support staff where possible throughout any of the relocations that take place. I'm not sure if I've missed any of the other points that were raised.
I think there's one additional point, if I may, Pat, which I think was a query around the location of the mobile, because there's obviously quite rightly the mobile needs to be close as possible to the communities that it's serving. And so just to clarify, the mobile is not going to be relocating to Fenstanton. it's going to retain a base within the city at Cowley Road. So there shouldn't be an impact on routes and so forth as a result of the relocating from Asham.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. That's a good point.
Can I just come back in on that?
Yeah, anything been missed, Barbara?
No, it's just on the comment about the mobile library. I had been told that they were looking at finding a base within Cambridge for it. But presumably, if it's not going to be based out at Fenstanton, that removes part of the reason for taking it out to that site because of access for the mobile.
Well, I think the Asham relocation is a whole family of services that are relocating, as you'll be aware, and it was evident that, you know, given that the communities that the mobile currently serves, that the vehicle really needed to be in the Cambridge area, since it's serving south of Cambridge. So that for that reason, the solution was to try and find somewhere within the city. Clearly, it couldn't be Asham, but it needed to be somewhere else. So Cowley Road is the current is the most likely base for the mobile. So as I say, which wouldn't impact on the routes.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Barbara. We'll move on to Elisa. Councillor Machini.
Hello. Thank you very much, Chair. And I'm afraid I must agree completely with Barbara, and I was just about to make a series of very similar comments. I have received representations myself ever since this item was scheduled to appear in front of CNI. And there have been a lot of library staff that have got back to me, and I have this email from one of the mobile library managers, which effectively says, you know, the staff at Asham are made up of several teams. They support each other and feed into all of the libraries in the county. We work codependently and we have a massive sense of community, and I see my workplace as a place I belong and feel loyal to. However, I have concerns about the location and suitability of the building and lack of transparency in how this choice has been made. There follow a number of comments about the public transport, which have already been made. I did find the wording in, whereabouts is it? Yes, there you go, 2.3.5 in the report in front of us, where it says, etc., the Lakes Business Park in St. Ives is in a location that gives easy road access to all libraries across the county. And I found myself sort of like smiling to myself a little bit. I mean, I'm glad there are roads, but that's just about the only thing you can say about that location. You know, like, I would have been a bit more worried, I suppose, if it had been proposed in a site that doesn't have a road that goes to it. But the real problem seems to be, to go back to the email, which I have now closed, but it does actually mention that the vast majority of the people that are proposed to be transferred to that site are in the lowest pay bands, don't have access to cars, and are also, in addition to these concerns that are their concerns, are also concerned about the quality of the service that they're going to be able to provide from a building that doesn't seem to have, it's not suitable for a front-facing service at all, and will require massive improvements and you know, modifications, which will be necessary before you can do anything with that site. And so that's the first part of my concerns. And the second part of my concerns is that ever since this came to my attention, I did a little bit of digging just to see how much of this had already been discussed. There was an item, a confidential item, that came to this committee on the in October 2019, which had information regarding the asset that this wherever it is, St. Ives site, the sort of aspect under which this is considered an asset and a commercial asset, which is all fine. I mean, I'm glad this was discussed. But if Pat says that there was consultation with the staff and that there were conversations around moving and the new location, and you know, the fact that this asset is not just an asset that we're buying, but that's the purpose of it, I mean, I'm really quite concerned that I didn't see any evidence that that was brought in front of committee members at any point at all. It wasn't brought to communities and partnership in October because that was only to do with this is a site and this is an asset, but there was no review from the point of view of staff and moving staff there. It wasn't brought to CNI last week and it isn't brought to us here. I mean, if the county was telling me we just want to buy this building because it's a nice building, we want to buy it, but the purpose for which it is meant to be bought, we can't approve it, I'm afraid. And I would really like, and I support everything else, I support the vision and the direction behind the whole document, and I will be very, very happy with 98% of it if it goes through. And I would completely support, I'm happy that, some of the staff needs to be relocated. I'm happy that you want to find a new building with a new purpose. I just think that to identify somewhere suitable, we need to do a bit more work, because when I heard that, they weren't suitable, the other options, etc., this was available, we're getting it. It sounds to me a little bit like we're not doing enough work to ensure that we're getting what we need for the money that we're paying. So I would implore, because I really want to make this point, I'm not trying to obstruct because of a party political point or anything like that. I really want this vision to go through as well as it possibly can. If we could possibly hold on this item, do a bit more review based on the suitability of this building to house the kind of staff it's going to need to house, and then come back here, and I would be more than happy to support something that has a bit more investigation behind it. So thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Just a reminder for me, this isn't a front-facing building at all. So no customers will be visiting the building. It's purely back office and a base for the books and the mobiles. And also, of course, this isn't a rush decision because the investigation into a suitable building has gone on for a very long time. So, it is something that's gone on for a long time. Is there anything else, Pat, you want to respond to Elisa's points?
On mute.
No, okay. Gary, anything you wanted to pick up on?
No, it's just that Pat is speaking. I can see she's on mute.
That's typical. I do that all the time. Sorry, Chair. No, just to confirm what you've said, it won't be a front-facing building. It's a distribution centre, and it's not a replicate of Rajashram. So it is only 50% of the staff that would be moving to the distribution centre. It's running as a totally different function, with the other areas being based in the libraries, which are front-facing.
Thank you, Pat. And as was in the paper at our last meeting, we members have particularly said we wanted that engagement with staff to be as helpful as possible. So that will now happen. Okay, thank you very much. Councillor French, Jan.
Thank you, Steve. Different subject. I don't know what happens to the rest of the libraries, but in March every summer when the schools are on holiday, we have the reading challenge. March Town Council recently gave a grant, as all the past mayors always give them a donation to carry this function out. Can you tell me how that's going to be able to happen this year? I'm not worried about the money.
Yeah,
I want the money back, but I just want to know, because there are so many kids attend it, and at the end of it, they have their open night with all their little badges and presents they get. So I just wondered how this is going to work this year.
Yes, I mean, it is going to be sort of seriously impacted. We're not going to clearly be able to run it in the way that we normally would. But colleagues are working on sort of an electronic version of the summer reading challenge to engage young people in their reading. So we recognise it's something we need to do, but it's going to be a very slimmed down version. Children will be able to get access to books, obviously, now that we're reopening. But there won't be the big kind of publicity blitz around it in terms of there's no physical materials that we've ordered, for instance. So I can give you, outside of this meeting, I can give you a more detailed response to that. But just to confirm, we will be running the summer reading challenge, but in a kind of very stripped down form.
Yeah, I would appreciate that, Gary, if you could get back to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. Councillor Taylor, Amanda.
Thank you very much. Today, I would have liked to have been celebrating with you all the fact that we're reopening our libraries and beginning to reopen our archive centre. But instead, I need to speak on the same topic that Councillor Ashwood and Councillor Mescini have so eloquently spoken on, and that is this new location for the library distribution centre. And I'm speaking really on behalf of constituents of mine who work for the service, and who have worked out well what their options are likely to be with the new building, and who have expressed concerns not only about how they're going to be able to get to work, what it's going to be like when they get there, but also about how they're going to be able to deliver the service. The new location is on a business park, more like an industrial park really. It's over 2.5 miles from our park and ride site, which is the only way of getting there by public transport. The bus times don't fit with getting there from Cambridge, so people who currently work in Cambridge and live here will not be able to do a normal day's work by public transport, even if they're going to do the 5 miles plus walk to and from the park and ride site, which I think is a very big ask, especially if people are on their own, perhaps working late evenings. It's in an isolated location. It's basically a warehouse. I understand from people who've contacted me that 4 of the people who are supposed to be moving to this location don't drive. So, it's questionable if you've got that high proportion of people who won't be able to get to work, how viable this proposal is, because of the distance and because public transport doesn't even get them there for a normal working day. The distribution centre also serves the needs of the Cambridgeshire Health Information Service, and people do visit the Roger Askham site at present, health professionals, nurses, librarians. So again, we need to think about how they're going to be able to access this business park as well. Public health campaigns are delivered by the service as well. It seems to me that in searching for accommodation, we need to be having accommodation that is suitable for staff who work there and for the service. And that this location is more about staff and the service trying to accommodate themselves around an unsuitable building. I appreciate from Ms. Carrington that library management have tried to find a site. I would put it to the committee that this site isn't going to work for the staff or the service, and that you need to carry on looking until you do find something suitable. Property market at the moment is extremely volatile. There's lots of companies relocating, closing down, more people working from home. I find it incredible, really, that you're prepared to accept such a poor option for our staff and for the services that we're offering. And I would suggest that we defer this decision and keep on looking. Thank you.
Can I just confirm with senior officers that we do think the building is suitable for the service, because Amanda suggested it actually isn't suitable for the service. So for the function that we want it to perform, Pat and Gary, we've been led to believe that it is very suitable. So can we just confirm that, please?
Certainly, Chair. Yes, we've reviewed all of the functions that are undertaken currently at Roger Askham, and with the distribution centre being at St Ives, we can confirm that we absolutely believe it is a suitable location. And referring to public health, although in Cambridge people have been able to drop in to pick up resources, elsewhere in the county they haven't, and we will operate the same function in which resources can be located for collection if people want to collect them at the local libraries, which currently happens outside of Cambridgeshire. So the options have been reviewed, and I'm sure Gary would like to comment on this also, but we're absolutely confident that it's a suitable site, and actually not only is a suitable site, is a site that will take us forward with the agenda for libraries moving forward.
Thank you, Pat. So any front-facing element that needs to be distributed in Cambridge City still can be? Yes, thank you.
I think if we were proposing to replicate the Roger Askham functions in their entirety at Fenstanton, then I think that it wouldn't be a suitable site. But I think the model we have is not to do that. is to have a multi-site model, of which Fen Stanton is an important part, but not the only part. And I think, you know, that's where the kind of the workability model comes in, because it's a multi-site solution.
Thank you, Gary. I know Elisa wants to come back, but Councillor Nieto hasn't spoken yet, so I'll go to Councillor Nieto first, if I may. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I just wanted a clarification. This distribution centre is going to be distributing books only for Cambridge City or for the whole of the county? Because I think this is that would be a very important point.
It's a district, just to clarify, it is a distribution centre for the whole of the county.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. So who hasn't spoken? So we now got some. Councillor Every, you haven't spoken, so we'll come to you, then we'll give others a second chance. Thank you.
Well, this is on a different subject, and I don't want to stop the debate, which I can understand people want to have. But I don't want to lose sight of what we've heard today about the huge amount of work and energy that's gone into our libraries and the creativity that our staff have shown in this particularly difficult time. And I don't want, I want to still register that from this committee, how grateful we are for everything that they've done. They have done a huge amount to try and overcome the awful conditions that we've had to deal with. And I've now got involved in the Library Presents, and I just wanted to endorse what Gary said about the fantastic approach, which actually will now change the way we work in libraries forever, I think, because of the dedication and commitment that they've got to. I just didn't want to let that go, and also to endorse the fact that we now have our skills centre in those libraries and how useful and helpful that has been. And when they reopen, I know that's going to be great. And I will be in the library on Monday morning in Ely, but please register our thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. We have a few, would like to just come back briefly, please, if you would, for a second comment, and then we'll move to the recommendations. Councillor Taylor, Amanda. You're muted, Amanda.
I apologise. I haven't taken. I thought I'd taken my hand down. That was from when I wished to speak before.
Okay. Thank you. Elisa, did you want to come back?
Thank you so much, Chair, for the opportunity. I must say, I didn't quite want to come back. Unfortunately, I've had a technical issue, and immediately after I finished speaking, my computer booted me out of the meeting. I came back as quickly as I can. I hope it didn't look like I left enough. But basically, like, I missed the answer, if any was given, to my point about if consultation with the staff was made and if the suitability of this building was concluded to be fine from the point of view of being able to employ the people that actually are supposed to work there. Then why was that not presented to committee before today? And I think that is most of what I wanted to ask. So thank you very much. I apologize if it was already replied, but as I said, technically.
I think the answers are fairly straightforward, one, Lisa. You can't do a statutory consultation until you've confirmed what the building will be that their staff are moving to. So while there's been informal consultation, you have to identify a definite building they'd be moving to until you can do the statutory consultation. That's just the way it works, I think. So I'm sure I'll get corrected if I'm wrong. But Barbara, you wanted to just come back?
Yeah, very quickly. The one thing I keep hearing from officers, members, everybody is our staff are our greatest asset. Regardless of the suitability or not of this site, we are not taking those staff into consideration. And a lot of them will be forced into a position where they will have no option but to leave. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, obviously, we hope through the statutory consultation that will be avoided, Barbara, but that needs to take place before we can know how the results of that have gone. So, Elisa, Barbara, if you could remove your blue hands if they're from the previous requests. So, members, if there are no other comments, we'll move to the recommendations. from the comments made, I think we need to take item C separately. So if we could move to the recommendations A, B, D and E, and I'll just read through those. Note the role of libraries and archives to continue culture and learning during the COVID-19 pandemic. Note and comment on the proposed first steps to reopen libraries and archive services. And D, note the ongoing work to develop the project described at section 2.3 of the report to develop services and opportunities at the most local level through the purchase of a vehicle. And E, note and recommend changes to the capital programme budgets from the business plan as shown in 2.3.11 and recommend general purpose committee to approve these changes. So we'll take those on block, members, if that's okay. If there's any dissent, please indicate. And I see no dissent, so we'll take A, B, D and E as approved. Thank you very much, everybody. And then we'll move to item recommendation C, and that is following the decision at Commercial Investments Committee on the 23rd of June to approve the purchase of a new library service distribution centre to endorse the location and function as suitable for ensuring effective delivery of the library service distribution centre and support services and formally consult library staff accordingly. So of course we can't consult library staff until we've made the decision. So that's the position, members, that's the recommendation. I think I'll need to go through members one by one and ask them to respond, if I may. So please say yes or no to whether you approve the recommendation. Councillor Ashwood.
No.
Councillor Batchelor.
No.
Councillor Costello.
Yes.
Councillor Every.
Yes.
Councillor Machini.
No.
Sorry, Councillor French, I missed you.
Yes.
Councillor Nieto.
Yes.
Councillor Smith, I don't believe Councillor Smith. Oh, Councillor Smith
I did make it in the end. Sorry. Yes.
Thank you. So didn't see you'd come. Thank you.
Sorry.
You, Councillor Smith.
Yes.
Are you voting yes? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Taylor.
No, absolutely not.
Thank you. And myself, Councillor Criswell, I'm voting yes. So Nick, could you please report the outcome of that vote?
Chair, yes, that's 6 in favour and 4 against.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, members. So that recommendation is carried. So thank you, officers, for all the work you've put into that item. And we'll now move on to item 7, which is the Innovate and Cultivate Fund, endorsement of recommendations. And welcome back, Elaine Matthews. Elaine.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Yes, this is quite a brief paper for the committee today, and it's to update the committee on the outcome of the usual quarterly recommendation panel for Innovate and Cultivate Fund. The recommendation panel took place on Tuesday this week, so we've been pretty swift with bringing this paper before this committee to consider the recommendations. As a reminder, the recommendation panel for Innovate and Cultivate is made up of 4 County Council senior officers from people and communities. So they represent adult services, children and family and community services. We have the head of finance on the recommendation panel, a trustee from the Cambridgeshire Community Foundation, and 5 elected members who are taken from this committee. And thank you for your time for those who are involved in that. This week's recommendation panel was part of the applications to the Innovate grant. So those are applications that were made in a previous round where we considered 5 applications in April, 2 of which were felt to have met the criteria for the fund and were invited to this second stage application process. As normal, as part of the second stage, we actually asked the applicants to present in person to the panel so that they can talk to us with some passion about the project that they're wanting to fulfill. And it allows the recommendation panel the opportunity to ask further questions, to get a real feel for the project and what it is they're trying to do. This was our first virtual recommendation panel and it went really well. Thank you to everybody that took part in that and making it a success. The 2 applications that we heard this week, the panel considered in great detail, and both of which were felt that we would like to recommend them for funding, and hence before this committee today to endorse that. Appendix 1 of your paper gives far more detail about each of those projects. And we first of all, or secondly actually, we heard from Ormiston Families application. Ormiston Families are quite well known to the Innovate and Cultivate Fund. We've previously funded them from other work, and we've been pleased with the way that they work in partnership with us. For this particular application, they've got a project called Empower, which they've been working on in Norfolk and Suffolk, and now want to bring into Fenland to help with the County Council services. Empower works directly with women who have had children removed and placed into care. In particular, they're looking at reducing the risk of further unplanned pregnancies and subsequent child removals. Ormiston family representatives were really great at going into quite a lot of detail about their project plan, about their budget and their approach, and the timescales for that. In particular, they're looking to engage practitioners who help these women address previous traumas, provide emotional, practical support, and really help them access local community and therapeutic services. This is a one-year funded project that aims to work with 24 women at the moment. There was a fair bit of discussion from the panel with the funders to understand actually how it would work if we had more than 24 people who needed the service, or indeed less than 24 people who needed the service. And the service leads who are assisting and will work throughout with Ormiston were very satisfied that Ormiston were able to work flexibly for us, using the right and addressing the needs of the cohort, however and wherever they're going to be identified. The funding that they've asked for comes to £44,308. The second project that we heard from is from Refuge, and they're looking at Cambridgeshire Health-Based Domestic Abuse Outreach Project. This was another project that was very strongly supported by the service lead. The service that they're looking to provide, the project they're looking to provide, is to fill a gap in identifying domestic abuse victims from within the health service. The aim will be to identify those people and then provide them with outreach support and make sure that the health services are better trained in identifying victims of domestic abuse and then further supporting them. That work will be achieved through recruitment of a health-focused outreach worker who will work with the agencies to identify where the knowledge gaps are, increase their knowledge of domestic abuse and other aspects of violence against women and girls. The officer will also have a caseload of clients that have been referred by health partners and will specialise in specialist trauma-informed casework. The project will very much increase the ability of the health services and particularly GPs to increase domestic abuse victims, meaning that they'll be identified at a much earlier stage. There was a lot of questions from our panel as to how this will help county council services and reduce demand on our services. But actually the service lead is absolutely adamant that by supporting 100 clients per annum, this will lead to great savings for the Independent Domestic Violence Advisory Service, the IDVAS, and Children's Social Care Early Help Services. The service lead strongly supported this, and the panel were unanimous in agreeing that we would also like to recommend this project for funding. The funding requested is £49,350.
Thank you very much, Elaine. So questions, members. I've got Councillor Machini. Lisa.
Thank you, Chair. It's not a question. I was just going to make two very brief comments. Number one, thank you so much, Elaine, for a fantastic meeting last time. These things do have challenges that are not always very obvious what they are, from random technology stuff that happens to organizing digital access for everyone. It's incredibly complicated, and I think Elaine and Leanne, and I'm sure others, which I'm through my own fault not able to name at this time, but everyone has done an amazing job. The meeting went so well, and it was really fantastic, and we were able to get really good contribution from the people that came to speak to us about their projects, and it was amazing to see. So I would really like to commend this in the strongest possible terms. The second comment is that, I think it was touched briefly during the meeting that we had, the importance of this at this particular time, the change in demand on our services that is resulting and will result from the current crisis. And these are some of the most important services that we provide or have to support those who provide them. And there's an enormous amount of vulnerable people that have had massive challenges that we are going a little bit towards helping. And I think it was mentioned that we are, as a fund, going to take a very quick breather and assess this new landscape. And I think it's incredibly important that we think about this and that we get ourselves involved in this and make sure that we're targeting. I mean, especially the second project that we considered, and the response from all of us saying, oh, this is amazing. Why isn't this happening everywhere, every 10 meters? I mean, there's so much need at the moment, and there's so many vulnerable women who are going to have their life turned upside down. So again, I would like to make this as high profile within this committee as we possibly can, this discussion, because it's incredibly important. And thank you everyone for the brilliant work that has been done.
Thank you, Elisa.
Would you like me to comment on the pause?
If you'd like to, Elaine, yes, that's fine, thank you.
Yeah, so as Councillor Mashini quite rightly says, the steering group for Innovate and Cultivate Fund, we have quarterly deadlines. The next deadline for applications is the 1st of August. That will continue, and that's for applications to Cultivate and to the Innovate Fund. The next quarterly round would have been the 1st of November, and we've decided to pause that round because we do want to take a closer look at how we can be perhaps more helpful or prescriptive even with the type of projects that we might want to encourage in the following round, which will really help us strongly with the recovery from COVID. And we think that we can be quite useful in setting out some quite strict, some fairly sort of robust support arrangements for people who want to come forward with other projects, to make it easier for them to apply for funds where we know a project might really help with our criteria for this fund.
Thank you, Elaine. And we'll report back to committee during that pause, won't we? So,
yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Ashwood, Barbara.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say what fantastic projects these were, and also to say the two applicants, they did brilliant presentations. They've been thrown into doing it over Zoom, trying to get grips with people they don't know. Really worthwhile project. Recommend it 100%. And that's what makes my heart sing about this committee, when we have the ability to come up and support things like that. So thanks.
Thank you, Barbara. Councillor French, Jan.
Yes, thank you, Steve. Yeah, I fully support both of these, but in particular, interested to see the Empower one, the support for Fenland, because as Fenland, as you're well, we're part of Fenland, which is in the Wisbech area, is one of the most deprived areas in the country, and I'm sure that this is very, very welcomed. So thank you, and thank you, Elaine, for reminding me of the date of the 1st of August.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. Any other comments, members? So it sounds as if we've got full support. So, yes, Jan, you've deleted. Thank you very much. So it sounds like we've got full support, members. So we'll move to the recommendation to consider the recommendations of the panel and confirm agreement to fund the following two applications through the Innovate funding stream, Ormiston Families and Refuge, of both which we've heard from Elaine. So please indicate if there's any dissent, otherwise I'll assume the recommendations are approved. I see no indication, so thank you very much, everybody. We'll take those recommendations as approved and support the Ormiston Families and Refuge funding bids. Thank you very much, everybody. So we now move on to item 7, which is the we move on to item 8. Sorry, yes, the Communities Capital Fund, and we have Ian Phillips to present, I think. Welcome, Ian.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair, and morning, everybody else. Three projects to talk to you about this morning, which have been recommended from the members panel. We have the first one, which is the Marchtown Rugby Club, which is a rugby club which is also working with the athletics club and the youth football club there into a single sports association. And this project is looking to improve the sports and leisure facilities that goes on within March. So improving the changing facilities particularly, but also improving the clubhouse there, so it will allow more social and community activities to take place. So it's very much a mixed project here of sport and community, improved facilities for the sports users, both on the field and off, but also a building that's opened up for communities to book a new space as and when they want to and run different social and leisure activities. The club have already raised 126,000 themselves and are requesting a further 234,000. And our second project is Swaffham Pryor Village Hall. This is a village hall that's extremely well used by its community, but it really suffers from a poor layout and design, which often means that the village hall has to turn people away who just want to book a small facility or a small room and isn't available. So this project will look to extend the hall and reconfigure it, bring it up to date, and will be quite a benefit for that community, but also for the surrounding villages, which I know attract demand from this area. They've raised 10,000 themselves and are looking for a further 62,000 to support the project. Final recommendation today is the project at Ramsey in the Neighbourhood Trust. So this is a joint project between the cricket club and the Neighbourhood Trust to firstly refurbish the existing sporting facilities, but also to construct a large extension within the building to really provide a community hub for Ramsey. So Ramsey, as you well know, is often has a deprived area and has difficulty in connecting to other services, be it public transport or digital services or other community or public services that happen elsewhere. So the development of this building will allow much more improved facilities to be accessible locally to people. And a project that's been in development for 6 or 7 years, working really closely with the local community. 350,000 is requested from this fund. 230,000 has already been raised from the Ramsey Million Big Local. So just 3 projects there to quickly go through, and very happy to take any questions or if anyone needs any further information or detail.
Thank you very much, Ian. I should just say I've had a note of endorsement from the local member, Councillor Schumann, for the Swaffham Pryor Village Hall project, which I'll just quickly read out. I'm delighted to see the recommendation to support the bid for a relatively small grant for Swaffham Pryor Village Hall, and would ask the committee members to support this small but mighty project. The minor changes and works that are being proposed will have a significant difference to this community asset and ensure that the viability and usability of the space is increased significantly. It's great to see how the community has quickly mobilised to put together this bid in a speedy and thorough way, which makes it one of the first to be considered. I know that officers and members panel will have properly assessed this project in depth and come to the conclusion the grant should be supported. Please support the recommendation for the improvements and make a big difference to this small community. So, yeah, so thank you, Josh. That's from that's for the Swaffham Pryor Village Hall project. So I now have comments from members. Councillor Every, Liz.
Yes, my apologies, Chair. I should have said at the outset that I declare an interest of Swaffham Pryor one, because that was one I sponsored. So I apologise I didn't do that earlier, Nick.
Thank you. So you'll abstain on that one item, Liz. Thank you. Councillor Machini, Eliza.
Thank you very much, Steve. Very quickly also to thank Ian in a similar vein to Elaine before for all the work he's done on these. These are brilliant. I mean, I've had the opportunity to have a close look at, I rather believe, all of them so far. And, you know, they're all fabulous projects, and it's really nice to see the community getting together and getting some support to address lack of services and create really, really important facilities for future use, and I very, very, very much enjoy being part of this so far. I do have a very quick question, which I do apologize, Ian, if you mentioned it, but I hate today. I have some terrible internet problems, and you were a bit croaky to me, so I didn't catch all of what you said. But this is an interesting fund because we've got, I believe, 5 million, and we're going through applications and awarding them on the basis of criteria, etc., etc. And I think it would be important, maybe not necessarily right now, but soon, next time a bunch of these come to this committee, to highlight how much has been given so far, how much we've got left, and how that measures up in comparison with how many grant applications we're receiving, just to see whether or not we could do more, whether we found a pocket of need for a type of projects that we should be looking into beyond this fund. So I think that would be, as this is a nascent sort of thing, I mean, it's quite new. I think it would be good to have a look at this aspect as well in due course. But thank you so much for everything else. It's been really nice to be involved.
Thank you, Elisa. So we're expecting more bids to come before the committee in August and probably September. So perhaps, Ian, in the August report, you could just include an update on the money spent so far and how much there is left, if that's all right.
Yeah, no problem at all. And just to update members on where we are at the moment, if you approve today's projects, we will have committed 1.1 million out of the 5, but expect quite a few projects to be coming through to the August committee, and I'll give another update at that point of where we are.
Thank you very much, Ian. Any other comments, members? So just to be clear, I think I have 3 abstentions coming up. If you could confirm, Jan, I think you're abstaining from the March Town Rugby Club bid.
Yes.
Thank you. Liz, you're abstaining from Swaffham Village Hall.
Yes.
Thank you. And Adela, you're abstaining from Ramsey Neighbourhood Trust bid.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, thank you. So are members happy to take those on block with those abstentions? Otherwise, the rest of us can vote for those. If we're happy to take them on block, please show if you're not happy for that. And I can't see any dissent. So we'll move to all 3 bids on block then, members, please, to approve the following applications for funding: March Town Rugby Club, £234,000, Swaffham Pryor Village Hall, £62,000, and Ramsey Neighbourhood Trust, £350,000. So please show if there's any dissent. Thank you very much. No dissent. And Nick, if you could just note those abstentions, please. Thank you very much. So they're carried then, members. Thank you. Everybody seems to have been in agreement. Thank you very much. So those approved. Thank you. So we now move on to item 9, Community Champions Oral Updates. Do any champions have any updates to present to the committee? Councillor French, Jan.
Yes, thank you. Hopefully I'm going to have 2 coming up shortly for time banking. So fingers crossed.
Thank you, Jan. Adela, Councillor Costello.
Yeah, hi. I haven't got anything much to add to my recent report, but I'm pretty excited that I've been invited to join a working party in St Neots called DAD, which stands for Dementia, Autism and Disability. They want to make St Neots a community that is aware of dementia, autism and disability, and I'm really pleased to be able to get involved with them because, you know, they're the things that I like to get involved with.
Yes, thanks, Adela. Councillor Every, Liz.
Yes, I just wanted to say how pleased I am that I'm now involved with the move to put the Community Safety Partnership at alongside and almost through the centre of the post-COVID discussions and work that's going on. That's a major move, I think, for us, because we're now very much place-based, and ours might not look like everybody else's, but it is a real move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Councillor Machini. Elisa?
Thank you, Steve. Yes, I don't have an enormous amount of updates from 2 weeks ago, I'm afraid. However, as I did mention last time, I do look forward, and I mentioned this to Adrian, and I will continue to do so. I do look forward to working out a way in which we can work effectively with the Cambridge area committees post-COVID as soon as we can reconvene them, which is not clear at this point, particularly when and in what form, but this is something I intend to work very closely with, and I will be updating as possible.
Thank you, Elisa. That's great. Thank you. Any questions for our champions members? Councillor Nieto. Lena.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, it's not completely relevant to this, but I just wanted to let the committee know that it's Councillor's French birthday. So I just wanted to to say happy birthday.
You wanted to embarrass Councillor French. Okay, thank you. Yes, happy birthday then, Councillor French. That's good. Amanda, Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. Happy birthday, Councillor French. I won't sing. I actually have a question for Councillor Meschini, the Cambridge Community Champion. You talk about the area committees of Cambridge City having been cancelled. Are you able to give us any illumination as to why the area committees have been cancelled for the last 6 months? Or many other council meetings from the City Council and County Council and other bodies have been taking place like this. Why not the area committees?
Thank you, Amanda. Yes, I have been looking into this for the last couple of weeks, and I think there has been some difficulty from the point of view of the City Council to agree on what system would be suitable to host area committees, in terms of the fact that at the moment, well, previously to when the crisis started, I mean, the area committees had there were two aspects to them. I mean, there were presentations from officers and other interested parties, and there was quite a lot of public participation. And I understand that the officers at the City Council aren't entirely happy with basically a system that would allow them to do both things securely. But I will continue to look into what we can do. This is literally something that I've taken up, the first thing I've taken up from being in post, and I will continue to have a look at what we can do. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
You're muted, Steve.
I'm muted, yes. Thank you to our community champions. No other questions. So we'll move on to item 10, which is the Committees and Partnerships Committee agenda plan. Over to you, Adrian, I think. And some committees aren't going to sit in August, but our meeting's right at the beginning of August, and we have got business to conduct, haven't we, Adrian? So we will continue with meetings as planned.
Yes, that's right, Chairman. Thank you very much. Yes, the meeting in August will go ahead. As Ian's already mentioned, there will be a number of capital fund bids to agree. We want to allow those projects to get going. And also, I'd like to request your agreement to add a further report, which will be a service director report, which will explain and go into some detail on non-COVID related business that we've been keen to progress, things like where we're going next with Think Communities, which we've talked a few times about. So a general service-wide report that would accompany but be separate to the COVID normal COVID report added to the August agenda, please, Chairman. No other changes.
Thank you, Adrian. So any questions on the agenda plan? Members? No. Okay, thank you. There's none showing. It's at this point we usually consider any appointments to outside bodies, members, and hopefully you've seen a report that 2 outside bodies have been passed to us to officially appoint from the previous committee that was responsible for them, and that's the Duxford Neighbours Forum, for which Councillor MacDonald is the local member and had already been appointed in the previous financial year, and Visit Cambridge and Beyond Destination Management Company, which Councillor Shooter was already appointed to, but it comes to our committee to endorse those if we're happy to, members, or say that we're not happy. So those members have already agreed to be on there. So can we just see if we're happy to endorse those recommendations? Councillor French.
Yes, thank you, Steve. Yes, more than happy to support these. I was asked to go on the Oasis Centre Trust, but I don't think it's appropriate because I'm not a Wisbech councillor, and have suggested that a Wisbech councillor actually goes on to that one.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I think that's under review at the moment, Jan. Thank you very much. So members, are we happy with those 2 appointments? Councillor MacDonald on to Duxford Neighbourhood Forum and Councillor Shooter on Visit Cambridge and Beyond Management Company. No dissent showing, so I will assume we're all happy with those. Thank you very much. So those appointments will be made. So that brings the meeting to an end, members and officers. Thank you very much for your attendance. Thank you to everyone for attending and watching this meeting, which I now declare closed. Thank you, everybody.